Now we're going to talk about two, I think, critical issues to understand in working with people. As ministers in particular, I think you need to really understand these, although all through organizational life. Again, these are two situations that are always there, always in play, and are often not particularly well understood. So the two that I'm going to be talking about is gender issues and generational issues, okay? And again, hopefully you're understanding what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is bring a lot of unconscious processes that you may not understand surround you, but are there greatly influencing your behavior, and as a consequence, all the people around you also, okay? And that's why, again, I keep defaulting to this whole thing of being the self-aware person who's well-defined, living in the blue zone so you can be non-anxious and keep your anxiety in bay. Understanding your story and where your strengths lie is your intentional difference, so that you can be congruent in what you say and be able to really understand the code in which you exist and the system generally around which you exist, because that context has so much to do with shaping your behavior. So all of those pieces now are something, hopefully, that you're becoming more and more aware of. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of these gender issues that are also there. There's a lot in the popular and research literature about these things. Hopefully what I'm going to say about it is as up to date as I could get it, although these things are looked into and thought about and studied a lot. So if you've come up with even newer kinds of information, fine. Also realize, by the way, when you get into these kind of issues, especially gender issues, there's political implications to it. So that can get tricky, even with research and granting and this and that and whatnot. In other words, people are very, very much committed to coming down on these issues in particular ways. And as a result, it tends to shape information and even research, unfortunately. We like research in particular to be completely objective. It's not necessarily, and you know how that works because we just went through a political campaign and how things get shaped and reshaped according to political agendas more than what the actual facts are saying to us. So if you want to fact check me as we're going through this, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But let's talk about gender issues, okay? Whether you know it or not. And by the way, I realize people that are watching this tape, there's going to be women watching this tape, and a lot of you are probably already thinking, and I accept that this is a man telling us this. So the information is going to be shaped because my pair of glasses has male on it, and that's true. I absolutely accept that. I realize that is my maleness. Shapes me, as does my Virginianness, my white Caucasianness, my 65-ness, year oldness, my Anglicanness, whatever-ness you want to add into there, those things shape the way you see things. So, but let's talk about these gender issues a little bit. And then if you want to follow on to that, so be it, and that would be fine with me. But I do want you to realize that these things are actually going on. Men and women, a lot of, by the way, my material actually comes from a woman. She's a researcher for Georgetown University, Deborah Tannen, who has been a professor there for a long time. She's a linguist. And has done a great deal of research into the differences between men and women. She's a linguist, so a lot of this has to do with communication differences that she has been looking into. But then it spreads into the workplace and how we understand power and hierarchy and all that kind of thing. comes into play. I think it's important to realize it, though. I think we give it kind of a head fake. It's like, well, duh, everybody knows that men and women are different. But then when it gets into the detail of it and the specifics of it, it gets a lot squishier for people as to what does this actually mean. So let's look at that, okay, which is important. And we're going to give you some slides on this. I'm not going to read all these slides to you, but some of them will include there. And we're going to start with the one that says men and women communicating. And it starts with what does a man's world look like? What does a woman's world look like? Which could be helpful to you, I think, and just thinking about it in this regard. Men's worlds tend to be, and I say tend to because now women, by the way, as women are moving more into positions of authority within the organizational world, some of these distinctions that I've seen in the past are becoming less prominent than they used to be because women in some ways are being shaped, I think, again, what I just said in the previous lecture, they're being shaped by the context. So some of the distinctions aren't quite as prominent as they have been. Men live in a world of hierarchy in many ways. Men tend to be, too, and I'll keep using this word tend because I'm not trying to make this arbitrary, but men tend to be more autonomous and they tend to lean more out of relationship than women who are much more network-oriented and tend to be much more connectedness-oriented. Now, I myself can give you lots of exclusions to that. In fact, I work with a number of women who are engineers. Engineers tend to be, in some ways, the consummate male kind of a profile, and the women who are engineers tend to act exactly like the men do in a lot of ways, kind of autonomous, kind of lean out of relationships. The language for a man, though, tends to be very much in gathering information and very linear in a lot of ways. And men, to tell you the truth, usually can handle a lot less closeness than women can. That's the way we were raised usually. In our relationships with each other, tended to be much more competitive. Guys, they'll touch each other, but usually it has to do with patting on the back and hitting each other and all that kind of stuff. Because it's very, very different than when we watch women together and how, even as little girls, how they actually interact with each other. Competition is often downplayed. There's that much more of a sense of pulling together and doing things that will pull each other together. And people who are more competitive often in a women's world as little girls are growing up are tended to be downplayed. Whereas in a man's world, the man who is competitive and reaching toward the top and all that kind of thing tends to be upplayed. Consequently, and you see then how this works out in life generally, that a woman who displays the very same behavior as a man, let's say she's very strong, very assertive, takes a lot of initiative, often is given the B word. Whereas a man doing the very same behavior is seen as a very strong leader, very directive and whatnot. So the woman is given a very pejorative label for the very, very same behavior. And that starts very, very young.